aspiring teacher right here.
Oh, good, good. Who?
This is Mary.
This is Maria. They got Joanna.
She's in the
You know what? Here you go, Misha.
Okay, wait a minute, get this closer. No.
Thank you.
You.
Oh, I can start? All right. Well, hi everyone. I'm Ms. Marlin, and I'm a senior and the student body president here at LGJ. I'm proud that I'm on track to graduate this spring, and I'm planning to go to college to study healthcare or health science, possibly to become a doctor or a nurse. My mother is a type 1 diabetic, and I'm inspired by what I see when I accompany her to her appointments. I want to be able to help others like I see the doctors and nurses do for her. I will be the first generation to go to college because my father had to work and my mother came to this country from the Dominican Republic when she was about my sister's age. My sister came to LGJ too. She just graduated from Manhattan College and she is now a research assistant at Memorial Sloan Kettering. I've been at the school since the 6th grade, and I can happily say that they've been supporting me on the road to get to college ever since then. The teachers and staff here will follow you all the way. There has been an even bigger push this year. All the seniors got together right here during college application week to work on our FAFSA, CUNYs, and SUNY applications. We also went over essay writing, and the younger students got a chance to see that this is what they're working towards. Started last year was an initiative called the Adoptive Parents. So basically, each senior gets a single staff member who's responsible for them, and they see us through to college, and they're basically our mentor for the year. But it's not just senior-centered, we're also working with the middle schoolers who are visiting a college campus. I'm also in 2 AP classes, and the school has recently added 2 more, and I'm incredibly proud of them. I'm proud to graduate and go on to college and the progress that our school is making. Thank you for joining us today, and I'm happy to introduce my mother.
Oh.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Portes. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm so proud of my 2 daughters who have both attended this great school. Mi hija mayor es la primera en nuestra familia en graduarse de la universidad. Hoy es Research Assistant in Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center.
So she said, my name is Maria, and she's very happy to be here today. She's very proud of her 2 daughters who both are going to graduate from this school, and her other daughter who just recently graduated and is working at Memorial Sloan Kettering.
Marlene se gradúa este año y va a la universidad en el otoño, si el Señor se lo permite.
As Marlon will graduate this year and will go to college in the fall, her dream is to become a doctor if God wants it.
Su sueño es ser doctora o enfermera. El éxito de mis hijas no hubiera sido posible sin el apoyo de esta escuela y de sus programas para preparar estudiantes para la universidad.
It wouldn't have been possible without the help of the school and the programs that help prepare her for college.
La escuela nos ha guiado en el proceso de solicitar universidad y de solicitar ayuda financiera.
The school has helped with college applications and applications for financial aid.
Este año Marlene recibió aún más apoyo y está recibiendo clase avanzada para prepararla para la universidad.
This year, Marlon has received even more help and has been taking classes, AP classes, to help her with college.
Esta es la razón por la cual yo vine a los Estados Unidos, de la República Dominicana, para que mi familia tuviera un mejor futuro.
This is the reason why I came to the United States from the Dominican Republic, so my family could have a better life.
Yo vivo el sueño americano a través de los logros de mis hijas. Nuestras escuelas públicas están logrando esto.
I live the American dream through my daughters. Our schools are making this possible.
Yo estoy particularmente orgullosa de que más estudiantes hispanos de Bronx se están graduando cada año.
She's particularly proud of the amount of Hispanic students that are graduating from the Bronx.
Nuestra comunidad avanza gracias al empeño y el esfuerzo de los estudiantes, las familias y escuelas como esta.
Our community is advancing thanks to our schools, families, and our community as a whole.
Quiero darle las gracias a los maestros de Smarling y a esta escuela por el trabajo que han hecho.
She'd like to thank my teachers and the school for all the work they've done.
Estoy muy orgullosa de ti. Te quiero.
That is beautiful. Maria, it's something every parent everywhere can understand. Your pride, and you have so much to be proud of. And we're proud of you.
Yes.
Because it takes a lot to bring up a child in this city. I've said many times it's not an easy place to be a parent, right?
Right.
And when you see a parent who's done it right and worked so hard to support her daughters and had a great school to help her, that makes you really understand it can be done. And we all have to help each other to have that same kind of success. So Maria, we are proud of you. Let's give her a round of applause. And to Esmarlin, you, first of all, you're incredibly poised. There's a bank of TV cameras and all these people, and you sound like you do this every day. And so you're very poised, very intelligent young woman, and I admire the path that you are following.
That's right.
And obviously, you worked really hard to be able to get on that path. And I have a strong feeling that you will succeed up ahead. And we want to congratulate you for all you've done. So, you know, it takes a great school to support parents who are working so hard and to really give parents what they deserve in terms of that everyday boost to their children. And you're seeing it here. This school is a success story by any measure. And when you experience it, you know, it's one thing to read about it, but when you experience it, it's a whole nother reality. I was up in the classroom with the kids taking the AP government class. And these are kids from the community who care deeply about this city and about this country. They want to make a difference. They want to make an impact. And listening to them, each one of them standing up and offering their question, every single one of them sounded intelligent, poised, thoughtful. They asked serious questions about serious topics, and they listened intently. You could tell, again, this is a whole school full of young leaders of tomorrow. And it's so energizing, it's so encouraging to see this good work being done. And I got to tell you that if anyone's worried about the future, go visit the AP class in government here, and you will get a shot in the arm, and you'll feel a little more hopeful. So to everyone at the Bronx School for Law, Government, and Justice, I want to commend you and thank you for what you've achieved. And I'm just going to take a moment to thank some of the people who achieved this, because I think they really deserve our respect. By the way, I want to thank the parents and the alumni who are behind us here, who are also part of it. And the founding principal is with us, and what a beautiful thing to have helped start something like this and then see it through to this point, and that it's continuing to just do great things. So David Banks, we thank you for all you have done. And Joanny Hernandez, the principal now, who has a lot of success to her name. We're going to talk about her great achievements too. I also want to thank, we're joined by the Vice President of UFT, Sterling Roberson. I want to thank you for your support and for being here. And Misha Ross Porter, the Superintendent for District 11, thank you and congratulations to you as well. So the kids I saw upstairs in that class, just like Esmarlin, are certain of what's their path ahead. They are certain that they are going to graduate. They are certain that they are college material, and they are certain that if they want to go to college, they will get into college, and they'll do well in college. You can hear it in their voice. That is what I want to see in every classroom, in every high school in this city. That's the vision, that for any child who feels college is right for them, that they have the confidence that they can make it. They feel everyone's on their side helping them get there. That is what this is all about for all of us who care about education. So we're here to talk about the growing confidence that New Yorkers can have, parents can have, students can have in their ability to graduate and go farther, because now, according to the state of New York, we have reached a historic new level in New York City. We're here to announce that the graduation rate achieved by our students last year is the highest in the history of New York City, 72.6%. And it's important to note that graduation rate has gone up in every borough and for every demographic. So this is now a citywide progress. This is something that's happening everywhere because we are supporting our students in every borough, in every demographic. Our parents are doing a great job supporting our students. Our students are working hard. Let me note, because we all care deeply about addressing the historic achievement gap and overcoming it, that we saw real progress, and we now have the smallest achievement gap we have ever seen, because our black students' gains increased in graduation a 2.6% increase, and for our Latino students, a 2.9% increase in graduation rates. That's something to celebrate. That's everyone moving forward. We set a goal of getting this city to a level that would have been unthinkable in the past, 80% graduation. We set that goal for the year 2026. I want to state the obvious right now. We are making progress, all of us. We are ahead of schedule. We want to get there even sooner if we can, because we want to see this school system go to places it has never gone before. And I want you to know that the reality in our renewal schools, which have been a focal point of so much of our effort, schools that had a tough time in the past and we believed many could be turned around and made better, our renewal school graduation rate went up 4.8% from last year to 2016. That proves that real impact is being made through the renewal school initiative. And finally, this school, I just want to put a point on how extraordinary it is. This school's graduation rate from the previous year to last year went up 6.1% to 83% overall. That's amazing. So congratulations to everyone who was a part of that. And this is such a great place to celebrate the progress being made all over the city. Now, why? First, our chancellor, you'll hear from her in a moment. Her leadership, her initiatives made a huge difference. One of the most essential was focusing on teacher development, professional development for our teachers. And that obsessive focus on her part, I think that's the right word,
Probably.
has made a huge difference, because we're taking the people who can do the most for our young people, our teachers, and we're giving them better tools to do it all the time. That's having an impact. Everything under our equity and excellence vision is having impact. Across the board, it's raising the expectations in the whole school system. Young people know that things like computer science for all, algebra for all, AP for all, are there to help them go farther than they thought they could go. And we know in the coming years, as more and more young people have benefited from full-day pre-K, benefited from our initiative to get all our kids reading on grade level by the end of second grade, you're going to see even more potential for greater results. This new graduation rate, 72.6%, it's something to be very proud of, and it's a point along the way to something even better. But sometimes it helps to look back over your shoulder a little bit in life and remember where you came from. this is where we came from 15 years ago, 15 years ago, the graduation rate in New York City was 51%. We've gone from 51% to 72.6% graduation rate in those 15 years. And we're going to go a lot farther. That's something everyone should be proud of. And by the way, with the toughest standards in the nation, the state of New York has the toughest academic standards in the nation. So there's a lot of stereotypes out there. There's a lot of assumptions. Here's some actual fact. This progress has been achieved while our students have to meet much tougher standards than in a lot of other states in the union. By the way, I wouldn't have it any other way. I know the wonderful professionals here with me wouldn't have it any other way, because that's the world they're going to encounter when they get out there, high standards and a need for a strong education. So we're proud of these high standards, but we also are showing our students can meet them. So that's all incredibly good news. But another issue we have to address is it's one thing to have a high school diploma, it's another thing to be truly ready for college. And it's obviously something you could say is in the eye of the beholder, but we do have measurements. And we want to let you know where we stand by our measurements on addressing real college readiness. Well, the first and best piece of evidence is how many kids are actually going to college. So now, as of this last school year, we have set another record. 55% of all our kids who graduated in the last school year are now enrolled in college. 55%. Again, a huge change from the past. That's 77% of all of our graduates. And the measures we use of college readiness, we continue to see progress. We want to keep pushing this point, because the perfect world is when diploma and college readiness equal the exact same thing, and that's a road that we're going to continue to fight to travel. But what we can say today is that 51% of our graduates, we can say squarely from last year, were college ready. We're on a goal of 66% over the next 10 years, and then we have to just go farther and farther. And if we can go faster, we will go faster still. Final point, and this is a very, very important one. I think for a lot of people here, we grew up talking about the dropout rate. And the dropout rate was a very painful statistic. And it used to be a very big number. It meant the young people who left high school and never came back. And this city, for decades, that was a high number and a tragedy, that so many kids were lost and never came back. Well, this started in the previous administration. I give them credit, and we've continued to drive it down further. But this number absolutely amazes me. The dropout rate for New York City now is 8.5%. It is now down to 8.5%. It used to be 20, 30% not long ago. It's now down to 8.5%, and we're going to keep driving it down. The goal is that every young person, even if they don't necessarily graduate in 4 years, that they do graduate. Well, this shows that we are reducing that number of kids who no longer feel they can make it. We're reducing that number all the time. That means a lot to me as a parent. I hope to all of you that we are seeing fewer and fewer kids who get disconnected, more and more kids who stick with it. And again, very happy to say the biggest improvement areas in reducing our dropout rate came among our Latino and Black students. So a lot to celebrate, but we especially celebrate when we hear the story of a young person who's on her way to something great, and there are going to be many, many more like you, as Marlene. Finally, a few words in Spanish. Más estudiantes que nunca se están graduando de nuestras escuelas secundarias. Las tasas de graduación aumentaron en toda la ciudad, y los estudiantes latinos y afrodescendientes tuvieron el mayor progreso. También aumentó el número de graduados que se inscriben en la universidad y hay menos deserción escolar. Felicito a todos nuestros estudiantes, a sus familias y a nuestras escuelas. With that, someone who speaks Spanish a lot better than me and who really gets a lot of credit for the progress we're announcing today, our Chancellor, Carmen Farina.
Well, it's really really a pleasure to be here today because there's a lot in my life that has come full circle here. First of all, muchísimas gracias a María y su hija. I could easily have been Esmeralda in terms of being my first in my family to go to college, although you're the second, your sister beat you out, but it's close enough. My mother would have been sitting next to me, not being able to speak a word of English, and I would have had to translate, and that was true of all my life. And yet she's the best mother that could ever have been because speaking English was not part of being a mother per se.
Amen.
So I really congratulate you, Maria. And I also want to say I came to this school, I don't know, 2 years ago, and I met the most wonderful principal, Misha Porter. And the first thing I did, or maybe the second, I stole her. And I asked her to join a leadership team. And when there was an opening for a superintendent in District 10, I invited her to go for that position because I know what she did here and what came prior and is happening now is what the kind of leadership I want in New York City. So there's a lot of things that happen here today that remind me of what we do. I also want to give a particular shout out to Urban Assembly Network and Richard Kahn, make sure he gets this word, because the one thing that the urban assemblies have done particularly well, I think, is creating mentors in the schools to get the kids to college, people who help them write their essays, who come back. There's a whole alum, right, group that comes back and makes sure that the gift they were given of education, they give back, they pay forward. So I think there's a lot of things that are happening here today that are really important. But I want to reemphasize something that the mayor has said. I think we're on a wonderful beginning. We have seen growth, but we're never going to be satisfied until we have every student in New York City graduating, whether it's on after college or postgraduate or just after high school, and is going to have a good paying job and be a productive member of society. So for that, our graduation rate is definitely to be celebrated, but our college readiness numbers is something we're really working very hard on because we're closing that gap, but I'm not going to be happy until it's totally closed. But today, the celebrating that L students, Black and Hispanic students have made the biggest rise. That's what we set out to do, and you know what? We've done it. We also looked at it a different way. What we didn't accomplish, the question that an educator asks, what do you have to do backward by design to get where you want to go? And we decided AP courses, algebra as young as possible, making sure that we have literacy programs in all our schools. These are the programs that we have put in place, and I quizzed the principal today. And I said, okay, and now this is the next step. And we're not going to be satisfied until the curriculum actually meets the standards of what it means not only to get to college, but stay there in 4 years and be successful. So these are the kinds of things that we're working on. I think as part of the equity and excellence, certainly since I've become chancellor, I probably spend more time in the Bronx than any other place. I was there this morning at another school, a renewal school that was having visitors from all over the state. They were coming from Troy, Rochester, Syracuse to see the work we're doing here in New York City. Because in order to close the gap, we have to go where the gap was widest and put the kind of resources and emphasis there, and then everything else will come together. So I couldn't be happier to be here today to thank everyone at the table because it takes all the elected officials to support us. Absolutely. And the unions and everyone else to do this work together. No one does this job by themselves. So it's a very good day in New York City.
Well said, and I want to just pick up on something the Chancellor said before I introduce the Councilwoman. So, Giovanni Hernandez, who's the principal, we were just talking about your story, and I think this is something that's really important for people to recognize. This is just pure example of a New York success story and the New York dream coming true, but now how she is helping so many others. So you came here from Puerto Rico at the age of 6 with a single mom, and you worked your way up, and you were able to get educated, to become a teacher, worked in our school system, and then worked your way up to assistant principal and now principal. And now you are helping the very children who could have been you not so long ago. So let's give her another round of applause to help her. Finally, I want you to hear from your council member and also someone who's done a lot to work with us on education and making the changes we need to do in our school system. Councilmember Vanessa Gibson.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, LGJ. It is so great to be back, to our wonderful Mayor, Bill de Blasio, to our Chancellor, Carmen Farina, to the wonderful principal here, Principal Joanny Hernandez, and to our former principals. I want to give them recognition, Misha Ross Porter, and our founding principal, David Banks. To all of the parents and alumni and educators, thank you for allowing this moment to take place. It really, truly does take a village to raise and educate our children. And because of our love for our scholars, our future leaders, we are here to celebrate incredible results. Graduation rates the highest that we've seen in so many years, recognizing that for vulnerable children, our African American and Latino children who face the greatest challenges, we are celebrating their success today. The investments that we're making, the resources, the after school, the mentoring, the teacher development, supporting our principals, this is how you make it work, and it has been successful. So I am grateful. I know this school very well. I'm always here. I give funding to organizations to come into this school because the Bronx School of Law, Government, and Justice is one of our best high schools in District 9. Amen. And we are grateful. We are so grateful. And I also want to recognize Maria and Esmarin, and to all of the students and parents, thank you for recognizing that through partnerships, we can have great success. We recognize that we're never complacent with these numbers. We must always continue to be creative in our approach. We must never accept the status quo, because our children deserve everything, nothing but the best, because they are the best. And it is our job, our responsibility as elected officials and educators and leaders to make sure that we invest in their future. I, too, am the first in my family to have graduated from college, and I'm grateful for that, because I never realized I could be or would ever be a role model. But when I hear all of the success stories, we want our children to know that they can look at us and see themselves. They can recognize that their future is not determined by their neighborhood, their ethnicity, their religion, nor their zip code, but the fact that they have God-given potential that we have to capitalize on. So I am so proud that we are here today. What greater location to celebrate such an incredible announcement than here at the LGJ family. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to our mayor. I also want to recognize a good friend who does incredible work here, Ms. Kim Felder, for all of the work you do. I love and appreciate you. And thank you all. We are not done yet. We're going to continue to push and push so that we can continue to make our young children the very success stories that we know they can be. So congratulations to all of our stakeholders, and thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we're going to be taking questions first on the graduation rate announcement, obviously other education topics, and then we'll take other topics after that. Anything to, yes?
I wanted to ask about the decline in graduation rates for EL students and the increase in dropout numbers. I understand that a lot of students test out of EL designation by their senior year, so I know that's about 11 or 12 kids, which obviously is good news, but still the dropout rate is up, and obviously with that smaller number of kids who are ELLs in senior year are still struggling to graduate. Obviously, I know the chancellor has done so much work on ELL. Is there something that's not working, or sort of what's the plan going forward?
Well, I think you said it very clearly. At some point, I graduated from being an L student to being more of a monolingual student, although I speak 2 languages. So I think when you look at graduation, if we're doing a good job, by the time they get to 12th grade, a lot of our L's should no longer be L's. So that's one of the reasons for that discrepancy, and I think it's very clear. The other thing is there are students who come in as L's, and school I was in this morning, for example, at varying levels. Like I was in an 8th grade class today, and 10 students had just come in this week. So when you come in as an L student at that time, it's much harder to catch up and to move up. So that is really one of the other things that we have to work on. And we're working on it actually for L students by working with a Harvard professor not only Lexau, who's actually now working with a lot of our superintendents to talk about what are the alternative ways to work with ELs, whether they're newly arrived or ones that have been here over a period of time. But Michelle, do you want to add to that? Okay. So that's one of the differences. And also, to be very honest with you, not all ELs, depending on where they come from, come in equal. You have ELs, and again, I was at a school this morning where of the 10 who came in this week, 5 come with no formal literacy in their own language. It is much harder. The hardest ELs to move forward are the ones who come older and don't come with a language, with reading, writing in their own language. It's much easier if you have literacy already to transfer that literacy to another language, but many of them are coming from war-torn countries. They're coming from the mountains. They have never been to school. You have 7th and 8th graders and even a little younger coming in who've never been to school. So those are our challenges and what we're looking at now. What are the different strategies that we can use depending on how you define you as an L?
I'm sorry, to follow up on that, are you seeing more of that now? Because this was a big drop in 1 year, and the dropout rate went up for ELs. So those factors that you're saying, interrupted schooling, students coming late, is that a change?
Most of our figures don't show it the same way, so I have to get back to you, Lindsay, but I think the other piece of this is specifically that we are seeing more students coming in over a variety of grades. Like, for example, what are the chances in February that you would be having 10 students all coming into one school at this time of year, mostly from the same country? So there's a lot of unrest that people want to come to this country, but I actually think that our percentage of working with ELs has improved across the board, in all areas.
Okay, other questions on the test scores or anything education related? You off?
Just on more on the divide between the graduation rate and the college ready rate. Just wondering, I guess, given the fact that a lot of students who graduate and end up at CUNY have to pay out of pocket for the remedial work over there, is there anything more that the city can do perhaps to kind of keep these kids a little bit longer so that they're getting these basics, I guess, for free rather than having to pay for them in college?
Let me start and then pass to you. Look, I think it's a very important question. First of all, I want to even go back one step. So why is there ever even a difference? Perfectly fair question. Well, it's important to recognize the New York State standards, again, are rigorous standards, amongst the very highest in the nation. And to graduate, you need to fulfill a whole host of requirements, including the Regents tests. So high school graduation per se, as I think we all learned a long time ago, is a goal unto itself. Graduating high school has real value. For a lot of young people, that may be the end of their education. They still can go forward with a high school degree and find good opportunities. We obviously want to make sure that anyone who wants to go to college and college is right for them has every opportunity to do it. So when we say a college readiness standard, it is implicitly going to the point of your question. We want to achieve more for those young people, so it's not just can you get to the level of graduation by state standards. We want you to be even more ready than that. All of the things we're putting in place, we believe will change that formula, that dynamic fundamentally, because I keep saying, like, the simplest way in the world to think about this, how do we expect a school system to succeed if we weren't doing our early childhood education right? This is just most essential. It always drove me crazy before I was mayor that we were saying, oh, let's do right by our kids, and we weren't doing the #1 building block. So now that we have pre-K and we're starting to put basic literacy in as a fundamental goal by the end of second grade, that all kids are on grade level, these are things that are going to have huge multiplier effect, but of course it'll take time. So now I'm going to let the chancellor speak to your question, which is, while we're doing all that, while we're trying to link up graduation rate and true college readiness, is there more we can do for kids in place?
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, if you look at our algebra initiative, that has really been, we've already seen a shift. And remember, we have 100 schools this year that we're piloting in 5th grade. We're not even waiting for middle school. We have increased the AP training, and we plan on having it again this summer. We already, I think, are absolutely booked up with teachers who want to take the course, because we have really defined what are the single skills that are most likely to show college success. And having 3 years of math is one of those skills. We were just talking today about in this school, what could they add to the curriculum? We talked about statistics being a course, because you need to analyze what is it that kids aren't getting that maybe we can give them to make it better. The AP courses are absolutely the right way to go. What the AP courses do, they prepare the students in a more rigorous way, A, to take their regents, and B, to be prepared to absorb more knowledge and be better at presenting knowledge when it comes to their college work. So we anticipate that that is going to be a real game changer, to the degree that we're adding a lot more schools to have more AP courses. There are schools, particularly in the Bronx, that had no AP courses at all. This was a school that had some, but I've been to schools on campuses when there was not one, and now we really want to make sure there are more of those. I think the other thing that I think personally as an educator, one of the first professional development programs I put in place was writing. Many of our students were graduating high school without being able to write an essay that someone else would want to read. So one of the first programs we put in place is professional development for teachers. We developed a curriculum, a high school writing curriculum that every single high school principal has, and that they can tell what is the narrative and what should be done in 9th grade, 10th grade. When I go to high schools, the first thing I look at is the writing. So we looked at what were the gaps that we saw. The other thing we're doing, we're working a lot more closely with a lot of our universities, and there's one area in the city particularly where the universities are now going into the high schools and working alongside our teachers, because there was a big gap between what the colleges expected, how they were teaching. You can still go to a college and have frontal teaching. We're saying we need to match and blend the best things that we do and the best things that they do. And so how can they work together to make sure that the students are getting what they need? So a lot more work in conjunction with both public and private colleges to make sure that our kids are prepared for interactive learning, for being critical thinkers. This is not just about taking a class and passing a test.
Okay, other questions? Anything on education or graduation rate? Yes?
In the past, we've looked at the Big Five and seen how the city has improved compared to the other 4 major cities in the state. This year, I noticed that 3 out of the 4 of them actually outpaced us with gains in graduation rate. Is that in the past? We used to always be outpacing them with our gains here.
First of all, we congratulate them. Second of all, my understanding, and I don't have the comparison against the other cities, but the comparison against the state is that we have actually closed the gap with most of the rest of the state. Do you want to speak to that specifically? Do you have those facts at your fingertips? Okay, introduce yourself and take a microphone.
So when looking...
Introduce yourself and take a microphone. Right. I should be a teacher, right?
Good job.
Right?
Yes. So Michelle Palladino, I'm the one who made those decks that you're looking at right now. If looking at the rest of the state as a whole, we actually, they increased by, let's see, 1.3 points compared to our much larger increase. So this is actually the smallest the gap has ever been between us and the rest of the state. And so while the Big Four did see increases, when you look at the whole rest of the state, we closed the gap in a way that hasn't been done before.
And just, I want to see if I have this fact right, that the statewide graduation rate is 79.4%. Mm-hmm. So again, you know, we are closing in fast, and that's everything. That's schools from less advantaged districts. That also includes a lot of schools from districts that have a lot of resources. We're closing fast in on that kind of number, and we have a goal to surpass that number, and we hope to do that pretty soon in the scheme of things. Okay, last call on education or graduation rate. Anything related to that? Still on that? Go ahead.
Just wanted to ask you briefly about the increase in the number of local diplomas that are comprising the graduation rate. What do you attribute to that? It was 4.8% this year, up from 4.1% last year, and a few years ago it was 3.2%.
So just to also be clear, the percentage of regions also went up, right? So the local diploma increase is still a pretty small percentage of the overall population of grads, and the state has introduced some new opportunities and ways for students to meet graduation requirements, and so that's what's reflected with the local diploma increase.
That's partially what the state is also doing in terms of making a lot of their tests multiple measures, which they feel is fairer, particularly for students with disabilities and other students who fit into other categories. But I want to reemphasize, Michelle, because you didn't say that loud enough, but the number of students taking regions has substantially increased, and the regions, there are only 2 states, or I should say we're one of 2 states that has the high standards that has state diplomas, such as the regions, Massachusetts being one of the others that's very high. So I think we should be very proud of what we've accomplished.
Okay, on education?
There's still a substantial gap between black students and white students, Hispanic students and white students. Is there any initiatives to specifically address that gap?
I'm going to start and pass to the Chancellor. Pretty much everything has an impact. You know, look, the equity and excellence concept is an acknowledgement that our school system wasn't aiming high enough across the board and that there wasn't consistency and fairness from school to school or district to district. So obviously what we've done to change the approach to the fair student funding to equal that up more. We could use a lot more help from the state to go farther. But big game changers, pre-K for all, after school for all middle school kids, computer science for all, algebra, AP, you know, these are all part of changing, and let's be clear, they provide a more level playing field, because then it doesn't matter if you happen to come from a more advantaged background. You're getting the exact same opportunity as any other child is. We need to go farther on the earlier side also, and we're looking at ways to do that. Everything from what my wife Charlene has worked on in terms of getting parents to talk to their babies and sing to their babies. It literally begins there, but a lot more we can do for kids at the youngest ages. But I think what we need to be clear about is the cumulative impact this can all have at addressing inequality. Because the initial results from the last few years are striking. You know, these results today, for example, put us ahead of the pace we set for getting to that 80% graduation rate. And a lot of the initiatives are only beginning to take hold. So I am very optimistic that when you kind of layer all these pieces, they go right at the heart of the achievement gap and allow us to really even things up.
And I'll say that one of the ones that specifically answers your question is the initiative of the Single Shepherd. We have put the Single Shepherd initiative in the 2 areas of the city that had the highest poverty and the most evidence of students not moving on to higher education, and that's in District 7 and District 23 in Central Brooklyn. And the Single Shepherd is a guidance counselor or social worker that's specifically trained that follows a family, not a student, a family from 6th grade to 12th grade. And what we're already seeing in anecdotal research is that the families are embracing it, so that many of the things that would have in the past gotten students to drop out are not happening. I have, for instance, in one of the schools I went to visit recently, the family came to the school to ask if they would help them find an institution for their child. He was too hard to handle. He wasn't doing well in school. There was all kinds of issues. And the Single Shepherd said, give me an opportunity. Let me work with you. And that was about 2.5 months ago. And the child is actually in school, doing well, and the family feels supported. Another school I went to, principal said to me he had 4 guidance counselors, 6 to 12 school like this one, and he got 4 more Single Shepherds. So he's got a team of 8 people that are becoming Single Shepherds in his school. And he said, what I expect to happen here is that I will have a bigger teacher retention, because the teachers now feel supported, and this is something off their plate, and he said, honestly, off my plate as well. And those are the kinds of anecdotals in District 23 in Brooklyn. I had one principal said to me, I love coming to work in the morning because I know all my hot button issues have an entire committee of people ready to work on them. So we have to take all the issues. You know, in the past we would say, well, you know, what can you do? I don't accept what can you do. We can do something about almost anything, but we've got to research it first and then figure out how to do it, and then, of course, figure out how to fund it. But I do think that we're on the right path. And the single shepherd, literacy coaches in some of our districts, we now have districts where they actually have an extra body just to work with teachers in kindergarten, first and second grade, to work with all the teachers on those grades to make them better teachers so those kids can then go on to third grade reading on grade level. So, I mean, and if there are more ideas you guys have out there, please give them to me because I'm open for everything. We now have all-day conferences for parents in their native language. We're doing one in Arabic, I think in about 2 weeks. We've done one in Bengali. We've done one in Mandarin. We've done 2 in Spanish. So if we need a parent engagement, we do that as well. Whatever it takes to make sure that every child becomes a productive citizen.
And just a quick follow on that, you know, I have said I want to make a parallel with Department of Education and NYPD. I've said at a number of the NYPD graduations that the new officers are joining a winning team. DOE is proving more than ever they are a winning team. They're putting up extraordinary numbers. They're proving that they're moving forward. That encourages teachers to be a part of this school system and to stay in this school system. I think this point about any professional, especially when they're doing tough work. It's tough to be a police officer in New York City. It's tough to be a teacher in New York City. To keep really talented people, they have to feel like something's moving forward. So seeing increase in graduation rate and seeing all these new initiatives, pre-K and algebra and computer science, it encourages people to say, okay, now I'm part of something. Now this is working. I got to be a part of it longer. And you see it with the great educators we have here, who obviously stuck with it because they were able to create success. So that is a key part of the single shepherd excites me also because what I think is so fascinating, the first story Carmen gave, imagine a parent overwhelmed, literally doesn't know what to do with their child, and someone comes in and says, we're going to bring a lot more help to this equation, and then proves that that kid can turn around. That sends a message to all the teachers, that sends a message to the whole school. And that would only happen if you had that kind of intensive support for the student and the family. So again, I think what's going to be a real important story in New York City next few years is how all these pieces start to support each other. If we can keep great teachers a lot longer, that's going to change the nature of the school system too. And I think this is sort of the big X factor. All these things are going to not only help kids, they're going to help us retain extraordinary teaching talent. Do one more call on anything education. Go once, twice, anything else. Mara?
Mr. Mayor, have you met with the U.S. Attorney yet?
Mara, we put out a fact sheet today because there have been a number of questions, including some that I was surprised by because I thought we had answered them pretty clearly previously. That is the definitive, your frequently asked questions, your clear answers. The simple point on the U.S. Attorney is when that happens, we will tell you when it's done. And you don't have to ask each time. I guarantee you when it happens, we'll tell you when it's done.
Probably won't stop asking.
You can try, but it's not going to really be productive and back.
I just wanted to skip back to the L students. I wanted to ask if you have numbers, or could provide numbers that compare the classification rates from the 2011 cohort to the 2016, those that had moved out of ELL and into sort of the general population. If you had numbers to share with us.
Well, actually, so on one of the slides, it sort of gets to this a little bit, where if you look at the number of English language learners, current English language learners in the cohort, we saw a pretty substantial decline, right, from 7,323 to 6,159, right? Similarly, we then saw a big increase, about 1,000, in former Ls, right? So there was a shift from those students being current Ls to former Ls.
That's compared to 2011?
Yeah, so that's looking at the class of 2016 versus the class of 2015. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, there's a special election next week. They tend to have notoriously low turnout.
Yes, they do.
I was wondering if you could just comment in general on your message to voters about the special election.
Yeah, our message is it matters, and come out and participate. I announced today I'm supporting Bill Perkins, who is a former colleague in the city council. I think has been a great progressive leader. the guy who really led the charge on the lead paint law, despite tremendous opposition from landlords. He achieved landmark legislation to protect children in rental buildings all over the city. He's been a great advocate for tenants in Albany. I think he will bring a lot to the city council, so I'm pleased to endorse him. But for voters in that community in general, particularly it's Central Harlem and surrounding communities, look, this is one of the places in the city that is feeling the impact of gentrification the most, right? This is one of the places that's going through the most change, and there's really important issues that need to be addressed. How are we going to help people stay in their community and keep their housing affordable? A central issue. People care about that kind of thing. Better make a choice between these candidates and come out and use their vote. Because it's very high impact. We know when it comes to some of the things that most affect people's housing, those decisions, an individual council member has a really big impact on decisions about what happens in that community on housing and on land use. So if you care about those issues and you live in Central Harlem and the other areas that are part of this district, come out on Tuesday and exercise your vote. That's my message. Please.
Follow up on that. I was with you upstairs when you were talking to the students in the participation in government class or the AP government, and you talked about those students getting involved. Just wondering, do you think that by endorsing someone who's already a politician as opposed to this crowded field where there are a lot of new people trying to, become part of the process, certainly the endorsement is intended to tip the scale in favor of the candidate. What's the message to folks who are still trying to figure out how to get involved when they don't have that kind of backing, when they're not already an elected leader?
Oh, I appreciate the question, but I'll tell you this. There are some elected leaders who are trying to change the status quo, and Bill Perkins is one of them. He always has been. He is not someone who came up as part of the political machinery. He's always been independent. He was a grassroots activist, and he's taken positions that really challenge the powers that be in this city. So he may be someone who's been around a little while, but he is young at heart. I mean, he is someone who represents the best of a change-oriented mindset. But I think anyone who wants to break through, we've seen more turnover in elective office in the last decade or so than we've ever seen in history. I think it's a fair statement. And Carmen is going to offer.
I want to use this as an opportunity to plug the fact that today we opened elections for CEC members. And a good way for parents to get involved is to start locally. And we have made the CECs in the last 3 years a lot more active. I meet with them on Saturdays, the presidents. They are in charge of things like rezoning. So I would say for people who are parents in the school system, and if you want to run for a CEC seat, it all went out today, and there's a process to follow. And sometimes the best politics is as local as it gets.
Right. I agree with that. So people should join CECs, community boards, so many other opportunities to serve. But again, my point about turnover, I think there has been so much opportunity for talented, energetic people, including young people, to have an opportunity to serve. You've seen a lot of the elections that have occurred in the last few years, whether special elections or regularly scheduled elections. How many assembly members who have gotten elected are, really quite young and are doing a great job. So I think that door is really open. Rich.
Mr. Mayor, I wondered whether you could comment on the battle between the various branches of the federal government in regard to the president's immigration order and what you think the upshot will be, and what if there's any implication for New York.
Huge implication for New York. I think it's a very positive sign. To see a 3-judge panel, the judges named by 3 different presidents, including one who was a Republican, unanimously agree that this was an overreach by the president, is a very encouraging sign. I think it's arguably the second most important thing that has happened since the day after the inauguration, when we saw the biggest popular movement addressing a newly inaugurated president we've ever seen in the history of this republic, right? So to have this panel stand up and say, nope, that's an overreach, and at the very beginning of the Trump administration to make clear he is not above the law, he is not independent of the judiciary, he has to submit to the judiciary as our Constitution says. I think that's extraordinarily important in terms of limiting some of the more extremist actions that the president might take. And it certainly has ramifications for what we talked about when the executive order related to immigration came out, not the later one on refugees, but the one related to immigration that we originally had the press conference on City Hall on, where our Corporation Counsel, Zach Carter, made very clear if there's an attempt to defund any of our work here in New York City, we'll be in court immediately. I think this puts a point on the fact that our judiciary is going to stand up when they think something's unconstitutional, and that's going to be a very important limitation on this president, which is what the Founding Fathers meant it to be. Dave.
Mayor, could you tell us, and sorry I'm seated this way, I was in the way. The cameras told me to get it, you know. Anyway, on the tragic accident from yesterday, is it your understanding of how this happened? Were there problems with this building? Were the windows safety coded issued as they're required?
It's a horrible tragedy, and when I first heard about the details with our chief of patrol from the NYPD, Terry Monahan, I mean, we were all trying to figure out how it even could have happened because it was such an intense impact that this poor man suffered. So I don't know, you know, the nature of the windows or if there have been previous problems. That's part of the investigation. But, you know, when you heard it, it's like, how could that possibly be? That there could be that kind of impact. You know, I just feel horrible for him and his family. Grace.
Just going back to that fact sheet for a minute. Last week, you talked about you're paying for your legal defense or any sort of legal advice you're getting because of the investigations, and you said that no tax dollars are being used for your legal defense. And in the fact sheet, it makes, I think, an important clarification, but that no tax dollars are being used to fund your individual compliance with these reviews. But the money that the public dollars that are being used, I think $11.6 million that's already been authorized for the city, that does in some ways cover some of your legal defense.
I don't think that's accurate. And again, Eric will follow up on any fine tuning. First of all, that dollar figure on the legal cost to see was not just about these particular issues. It was a general allotment for city legal expenses in general. So we can parse exactly how much is related to these investigations and how much is related to other matters entirely. The issue is, and I think I used the New York One analogy last week when we were talking. Anybody in their workplace, if an issue comes up related to their work, deserves a right to counsel from their work. I think that stands to reason. That's something I am not taking advantage of, and we're doing that. You know, the costs will be covered separately in my case, but for everyone else, their legal expenses will be covered related to their work for the city of New York. So that's how I've always understood it, and you know, we can go over chapter and verse with you, but that's exactly the dividing line as I understand it.
And any movement on, I know last week you had said you might consider setting up a legal defense fund or something along those lines.
We have to do that. It's the only way. Again, I inform you again that I am not a billionaire like my predecessor. There's no way I could possibly cover these fees personally. It will have to be a legal defense fund model. We have not yet set that up. When we do, we have to raise money into it according to a set of rules. We have to disclose. We absolutely will disclose the money, and then we will further pay the bills. But that's going to take a lot of different steps.
So, Mayor, I wanted to ask you about the progress report that's come out on your 2013 campaign and the promises. Just wanted to ask, given that that was produced as part of a campaign, and obviously we're in a re-election year now, can you just explain why so many taxpayer resources are going to track something like that that essentially was a campaign document?
Oh, how wrong you are. Yellow card. It is when you make a commitment to the public as part of an election, and then the public votes and they choose you, everything you said is now part of governance. It's not like a campaign is somehow separated from governance. These became promises of what we had to produce for the people through government. So we tracked those commitments. You guys, to your credit, will always say if a commitment hasn't been followed through on. That's your job. Well, we thought, okay, let's make it easier on all of us by actually tracking them and holding our feet to the fire and making ourselves efficient at following through, or admitting if for some reason something couldn't be done, or we realize there are unintended consequences. So no, it's a perfectly, in fact, it's an enlightened governmental expense. More people should do it, in my opinion. Track everything you said, and a lot of those, Yoav, are way since the campaign there, since I've been mayor. A number of initiatives were not talked about at all in the platform. Simple system. If I promise I'm going to do it, put it on a chart, track it, own up to it if for some reason it's not happening. I think that's healthy for everyone involved.
The state comptroller rejected a contract for Broadway Stages to build a new studio on Staten Island where the state used to have a prison because of their involvement in the federal investigations into your fundraisings. So I'm just curious, like, are you at all concerned about the fallout, like, for land deals or other things from these investigations?
I have not seen the state comptroller's report. I don't know if it was about this specific set of issues or other issues. I don't know what it is. No, I don't think it's right to extrapolate. I think every individual case is different. So, again, I haven't seen the details, but comptroller, I'm sure, is going to look at each case individually. Yes.
Oh, yes. You called this morning on the radio, you called the controller's denial of the body camera contract that keeps them. And the controller's office has raised the issue of an ongoing DOI investigation. And the controller's office said that, the city's not being forthcoming and explaining what's happening with that investigation. Do you know what the status of that investigation is?
No, but it's apples and oranges. That's why it's a cheap stunt, because the comptroller understands his authority and where it begins and ends. And the concerns he raised were not about the contractual, procedural reality. That's what he's supposed to look at. And I said, we know where all the concerns, quote-unquote concerns about the company that's going to do the body cameras came from. It came from their competitors. And the comptroller has a habit of, sometimes putting out things like this that are not well justified. So when you look at the facts, body cameras are necessary for accountability and transparency in the relationship between our police and our community. That is a fact. Our current police commissioner, Jimmy O'Neill, believes we need to move to body cameras for all of our patrol officers. Our previous police commissioner, Bill Bratton, believes it, and police departments all over the country believe it. Now it comes down to you make a choice for a contractor. NYPD went through a rigorous process, looked at contractors, looked at companies that have been working with police departments all around the country, chose a particular company, just like they chose companies for all the other technology they've done brilliantly in recent years, and we're moving forward. The comptroller raised concerns that he does not have jurisdictional authority over. We said, that's nice. You can raise those concerns. It's not changing our mind. We need to get these body cameras out. We need every patrol officer to have them by the end of 2019. If you then say, well, DOI is looking at something, I said on the radio, that's DOI's right to do. We're not going to stop a contract because they're looking at it. If they come to a particular conclusion, of course we'll consider what conclusion they come to. But why would we hold up body cameras for thousands and thousands of officers because something's simply being looked at initially? That's just not, that's not smart.
Is there fraud involved as far as you know?
No, I don't know of any fraud. And again, what I think is going on here is the competitor company trying to undermine the one that won bluntly the most prestigious contract in the country with the NYPD, the comptroller trying to score points, and we're not talking about the facts here. The facts are this is a company the NYPD believes can get the job done best. If DOI finds something new, that will be given absolute full attention. But we're not slowing down on body cameras. The people of this city want body cameras on our officers, and they're absolutely right to want them. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, aside from the initiatives, the housing initiatives you're going to be talking about at the Monday's State City Address, what are the other major topics we can expect here?
Again, I'm not going to do this kind of preview too early. I think you're going to hear this particular point I raised today and the announcement. There's going to be a big focus on how we address the affordability crisis, which is, I believe, the #1 issue on the minds of New Yorkers. And what we announced today, the fact that within our affordable housing plan, 10,000 apartments will now reach people at lower income levels, typically people who make 20,000s or 30,000s. It will reach seniors. These apartments will reach seniors who are lower income and veterans who are lower income. That really responds to a lot of what we've heard from communities and from council members about how they'd like to see our vision evolve. So this is an effort to respond to the affordability crisis that's on the minds of so many New Yorkers, and the fact that so many people are worried about being displaced and unable to afford their own city, and recognizing what so many folks locally have asked for in terms of the evolution of our plan. This is a big step in that direction. Greg.
Great. Okay. I want to go back to the fact sheet, and very specifically the lawyers. You announced that you were bringing in Barry Burke back in like March. So Kramer Levin has been working with you, giving you advice for about a year, not quite a year. And they have not sent you a single bill, correct?
No, they've sent bills. We just haven't had any money to pay them yet.
How many hours have they put in?
I don't know the number of hours offhand.
Can you get that for us?
I don't. Again, this is now about me having to raise money to pay personally for these bills. This is not the government. So we will let the lawyers define how it's appropriate to address that matter.
You can't tell me right now how many hours.
No, and again, I'm not even sure that is a purely appropriate public matter. The bottom line is they have sent bills. They will be paid. It's going to take a while. That is for sure. But they're providing my legal defense.
They're lobbyists as well. They're also lobbyists.
They're obviously, if you know anything about the legal community in this city, they're one of the most renowned legal firms for this type of work. It's an obvious place to turn for legal support, and I'm going to continue to make sure that their bills are paid off fully. But any other matters, we have absolute ability to separate the different considerations, and I've said about everything in this reality. We're going to make decisions on any governmental matters according to the merits. That's what we do every single time. Last call. Anybody else? Going once? Way back.
Can I go back to the announcement today with another kind of staff question? The Board of Regents expanded student eligibility to appeal for graduation, even if they didn't pass one or two of the exams. Does the city know how many students that might have affected?
We'll get back to you with that one.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
That'll be your meeting. Be nice to them.